Well, DeeAnna, thank you so much for taking time to connect with us today. It's great to see you.
Thank you for having me. Glad to
Yeah.
be here.
So I want to start off because this topic of soul care, I know, has been a huge focus for you and your career. Why is soul care so important, and why should we all be concerned about it?
Well, there's the mind, body, spirit concept, the Trinity, I call it. And I think that soul embodies all of that. So if we want to reach our highest potential for the greater good of ourselves and others, then it makes sense that we want to take care of that soul in a
Hmm.
nutshell.
Yeah. What
Yeah.
happens? What happens if we don't take care of our soul? Like, what's the downside?
Well, the downside is I think a lot of people, I have a lot of people who come to me and I was one of these people too. What is my soul's purpose? Like they're searching, they don't know, they're in some sort of existential angst,
Hmm.
um, questioning the meaning of life. That's what I mostly see. But if we don't take care of that whole trinity, and none of us are perfect, it's a lifetime job. But if we don't take care of it, it's going to show up in our mental health. It's going to show up in our physical health. It's going to show up in our spiritual health. So I think that's why, looking at the entire picture holistically, psychospiritually is important.
Hmm. So I always want to hear from our guest about your story of awakening,
Mhm.
taking us back to whether it was in your childhood, you had some sort of connection with faith or spirituality, or as an adult, kind of how did that unfold for you?
Um, I don't know that I was mindful of the journey early on. I think a lot of us could say that. But I was one of those children that um, had I didn't know what to call it. Nobody talked about it, but I had sort of a sixth sense about things,
Hmm.
which was because I didn't have anybody to talk to about it. It's not something you talk about at the dinner table when you're 8 or 9 or 15, 16 years old.
Sure.
Um, it was a little overwhelming. I didn't quite know what it meant or what I was to do with it. And it made me feel different, of
Hmm.
course.
How did that show up for you when you say sixth sense? Did you see things, hear things?
I would mostly, I have a knowing, like it's just a knowing. I know it.
Hmm.
I don't know why I know it. Don't know what the purpose is sometimes of me knowing something. So I have the knowing. I also have empathic responses to situations and people. So I can walk into a room and get a not so good feeling, or meet somebody and get a not so good feeling. Then when I became a therapist, it was almost as if, because of my skill as a therapist and my training, it was almost as if I was a medical intuitive. So I would be able to meet with a client, and before I knew the history, the backstory, anything, I had a sense of what their struggle was, what their diagnosis was.
Hmm.
Um, and I just realized over the years that this was a gift. I tried to shut it down. I went to graduate school to justify my intuition, I think, um, and become a counselor. Because how do you hang your shingle as a seer? Um,
Hmm.
but during my first decade, I'd say, of my mental health career, I still had the intuition, but I kept tamping it down because I honestly didn't know what to do with it. But I also realized that intuition was already working with me and for me
Hmm.
and for my clients.
Hmm.
And then at some point, I came out of the pixie closet, um, I, I guess about a dozen years ago, and many of my colleagues were, crinkled their nose at me. Um,
Why did you come out, like, so to speak, as you said? Like, what led up to that for
I
you?
think what led up to it was about 25 years ago, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder, sarcoidosis, exposed to black mold. And I already had a congenital disability from birth. And I realized that first year of treatment that I could not stay in that medical model. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew that wasn't it. And so early on, um, I was searching for that holistic fit that was going to bring me more health. Um, and I'm still searching, right? It is a full-time job sometimes if you have a chronic disability to take care of yourself in a way that moves me forward.
Hmm.
So I think that was the impetus. And then at some point, um, as I got older and my dis-ease process continued, um, I was on a quest. And and then there became the knowing of you need to do this or you need to do that. And one of this was you need to learn Reiki. I didn't really even know what Reiki was, but sort of the universe said, this is your next step.
Hmm.
This
And
is, this is,
you were a licensed therapist,
yes.
marriage family therapist, psychotherapist. Like how
I'm
would
a,
you designate?
I'm a licensed professional counselor in New Jersey. I'm a licensed mental health counselor in New York.
Okay, so you're in this professional role, and then you're saying, okay, I now need to learn Reiki.
Mhm.
Did you have any internal conflict of like, how does this fit into
Oh
my
yeah.
therapeutic model? What
Oh
was
yeah.
that internal conflict?
That internal conflict was, and even today, and I work with a lot of therapists who struggle with this. Oh my gosh, well, what about our scope of practice? Like, am I gonna am I gonna really push the envelope and step out of bounds? You know, because we have a it's not as rigid as we think it is, but we've been presented with this concept that ethically and legally we are in a box and you don't color outside the lines.
What would that box be perceived to be?
Evidence based.
Okay.
So evidence based and evidence based. So insurance companies, the medical model
Hmm.
pushes that we use evidence based, and people, that's a misnomer. People don't understand that there are a lot of evidence based approaches that aren't necessarily just cognitive behavioral therapy, which is CBT has the most research. So that's what we hear about. That's what the insurance companies kind of push us to use. But there are a lot of techniques that we can use that have been around forever.
Hmm.
You know, when I went to graduate school, I learned about Carl Jung.
Hmm.
Carl Jung is the father of what I term psychospiritual
Hmm.
approaches.
How would
So
how would you define, by the way, psychospiritual? Because I know that's a very strong word that you use throughout your, your website and social media and so forth. What does that mean?
for me, psychospiritual means combining the spiritual literacy as a therapist with the psychology and the psychological approaches that I understand. So if we think about we're taught as therapists, we need to be multiculturally aware, right? We need to have cultural competency. We have to have cultural humility. Well, spirituality often falls under that umbrella of
Hmm.
culture.
Right.
So, psychospiritual is really understanding and meeting the client where they're at with their own spirituality, and then utilizing the skills I use as a therapist. Psychospiritual is not a lot different than metaphysical. But in some camps, if you use the word metaphysical as a therapist, you get the stare.
Right. You're busting out crystals.
Yeah, yes, I am.
Hold this crystal while I talk to you.
Yeah. Um, so I don't know if I answered the question, but yeah, coming out of the pixie closet was a challenge. It started with Reiki, and the next step was somebody introducing me to essential oils. And I'm like, I don't think so. I don't do aroma. I don't do fragrance.
You
She's
were
like,
you were
no.
averse to it in the beginning,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and
I'm
yet
like,
you've
oh
written
no.
books about it now. Okay,
That's called transformation.
so now that you have these different modalities that you were introduced to, Reiki, aromatherapy, how do you bring that to a client situation when you've been utilizing more cognitive behavioral therapy? Like, hey, I'd like to try something now. Can we try this? Like, yeah, how do you introduce that to your clients?
Well, I introduce it by being transparent on my website.
Hmm.
So, and I'm not on insurance panels. I don't take insurance. Um, I like to think that I work above the wellness line because I'm also a coach,
Hmm.
trained as a coach, and I train coaches. Um, so really, when a client comes to me now, they're they're in the sandbox.
Sure, sure.
And then many clients will tell me, I use oracle decks or I use
Hmm.
crystals and then I just expand that conversation to see how that might or might not be beneficial within session.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So when you said you first started coming out about these different things, you said that your colleagues kind of wrinkled their nose at you. How do people connect with you or approach you now about like your integration of these things?
Well, there is a tribe of us and it's growing. There's several Facebook groups of therapists who are, utilizing alternative um, techniques and methods.
Hmm.
So I don't feel, so alone anymore. So it's interesting because I teach some courses that are just very straightforward,
Hmm.
clinical supervision. There, I don't put a specific spin on it. It's clinical supervision, and 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 that's being a gatekeeper to our profession. So it's a very serious, formal training. But people go through the training because they need this training to get their certification or meet the state requirement, and they pick up on the pixie dust.
Hmm.
I don't come out and say it necessarily. I talk about spiritual literacy and cultural competency, but they get a sense of who I am. And then they come back to me saying, oh, okay, can we talk about this?
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
see that you do this.
Hmm.
How did you, and so then I end up either in a consultation role or they've decided to take a totally different sort of course.
Hmm.
So, yeah, that's how that plays out.
Hmm. You've written numerous books, but one of the books is at the center of kind of an effort, a platform that you call Essential Soul Care. So I'd love for you to walk us through how did Essential Soul Care come about? What is it? Talk to us about the book, the Oracle deck, the course, who it's for. Like, I just want to hear all about it.
So Essential Soul Care came about because I was, doing the Reiki and energy healing. And then I was introduced to essential oils, and literally that popped me open. That was my portal for
Hmm.
my transformation. It was through the olfactory sense, very powerful. I had my spiritual awakening. And spiritual awakening for most of us doesn't happen without dark night of the soul. So there was that combo, and I was doing my own work.
This is
But
a first for me. I hate to interrupt, but I want to hear more about that because you're saying that essential oils opened you up to a, a different dimension of connection with spirit, or like
yeah,
talk to me about this.
all of that. Like I told you, I was always clear, cognizant. I was always, I had some clairvoyant skills. Some mediumship skills. Nothing that I, went to school to learn. I just
Hmm.
had it. But then when I was introduced to essential oils, the essential oils supported me physically too.
Hmm.
But when I started using the essential oils every day, it just that olfactory sense just opened me up, and all of my
Really?
clear senses became even stronger.
Wow. And through like a diffuser or direct application to your
All of the
skin,
above.
or
All of
really?
the
And you
above.
just began to see a greater openness.
Yes, and so I know this sounds really woo, but the essential oils became like the oracle for me.
Hmm.
And then the same sort of intuitive sense with other people started happening. I had a brick and mortar for a while, an aromatherapy shop, and people would come in and I would sense the oil they needed even before I knew what that oil really did. And I would say, okay, I'm getting the sense that you need helichrysum. Let's look that up. And I would look it up with the client and we'd talk about it and see if that resonated. But yes, they are just very powerful tools. Um, and I know there's a big push, in the essential oils market to sell, sell, sell. That's not my thing. I use them personally. I use them with clients as appropriate. But that became the foundation for Essential Soul Care. So I had created this wellness wheel, and clients and therapists and coaches use wellness wheels all the time. And I put essential oils in the middle of the wheel. Like,
What is a wellness wheel, just for those of us who don't know?
a wellness wheel is like, think of a pie chart,
Hmm.
and there's certain equal parts of the wheel, like physical health, community, um, uh, mental health, spiritual health,
Spirituality.
all
Hmm.
work life balance, that sort
Hmm.
of thing. And I put essential oils in the middle to say essential oils can support all of these parts of our lives.
Hmm.
Like, they're kind of the heavy lifters. So they're there to support us when we use them. They don't fix, they don't cure. It's support. And that became the foundation of Essential Soul Care.
Hmm.
And then one of my colleagues and I decided to create an Oracle deck, and we wanted a workbook to go with it, but we didn't want it to sound like work, so we called it a playbook. Um, and the playbook is really for people to explore the right left brain connection. There's crossword puzzles, there's word search, there's a glossary of terms, there's pages to color, there are pages to write haiku poetry or write your affirmations, your gratitudes. So it's a playbook. It's set into 7 sections based on the chakras. And then we created the deck to go along with it. And the deck is 49 cards based on the 7 chakras. And we have a matching element, like the heart chakra matches the element of community for Essential Soul Care. And in the guidebook, if you pull a card, the card's going to say which chakra element it is, what oil corresponds, an affirmation, and 2 journal prompts. One is soul play. And if the card comes in reverse, then you do soul study, which is the shadow side.
Hmm.
So there's a straight out journal prompt, and then there's might want to do some further explanation.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And who would you say that this is for? And I know you didn't dive into the course yet. I want to hear about the course. Um, and who is it for, and where should they start?
So the Oracle deck is really for anybody. I mean, it's a very simple but rich system for anybody that just wants to pull a card every day. What does the universe want me to know today?
Hmm.
Just for exploration. And what I encourage people to do is also think about the synchronicities. Like, you pull a card and, like, this doesn't relate to anything in my life today. Okay, give it 24 hours and see what comes up, what dots connect for you. Because the best way to increase your intuition is to track synchronicities. When
Okay,
you can
wait a
track,
second. Wait a
yeah,
second. I want to hear that again.
the best way to increase intuition is to track synchronicities.
Now tell me why.
Synchronicities, that word was a Carl Jung term. And he said, if you track your synchronicities, your intuition will grow. What it really means is, when you're tracking synchronicities, you become more mindful, you become more grounded, and you can see the meaning around you. Right? We all have synchronicities every day. It's whether we're paying attention or not.
So I want to dive into this for just a second, because I have a personal challenge with synchronicities. Sometimes, like, if it's, I guess it's like, I'll hear somebody say, show me a red car if, kind of like if I'm supposed to do this or whatever. Or I happen to see lots of red cars, and I think maybe that's just because you're looking for red cars. You become more mindful of them. Or, I saw a certain number at a certain time. Like, help me process through that. Like, what would you call a synchronicity? And I think I sometimes struggle with, okay, if it really could never have happened, this is crazy. Like, this is absolutely crazy. I guess that there's levels of synchronicity in my head.
There are levels, and sometimes it is what it is, right? It's the fact that you've paid attention to it. So you go to, and this happened to me
Mhm.
recently. I go to a stoplight and I see 444 in front of me on a, I'm not looking.
License
I
plate.
just see 44 license plate.
Mhm.
I turn, there's a billboard 444. I turn
Mm.
to the other side, there's a 444. Okay,
Mm.
well, you know, some would say that means the angels are watching. For
Mhm.
me, it's like, okay, wow, I just tracked that. The universe says I'm on my path. That's all.
Mm. Mhm.
It may not mean any more than that. It's just a, a nod to me
Yes.
that I'm noticing, that I'm paying attention.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yes, yes. And so you're saying the more that we track those, the
Mhm.
more that that increases our intuition.
Yes, because
Mhm.
it means we're paying attention. So I did a podcast a couple of months ago with a person who her vocation is she's a music therapist.
Okay.
Okay, it was a lovely podcast. I get in the car after the podcast to go to town. I'm at the stoplight, and the bumper sticker on the car in front of me says, I heart music therapy.
Mm.
That bumper sticker was going to be there anyway,
Mhm.
but I saw it.
Yes.
So, okay, I'll check that box. Yeah, that goes in my synchronicity journal.
You write these down.
Yeah.
Okay. And then do you go back and look at them later
It's
or
fascinating just to see the little things and the big things. And, um, again, it's just a method of becoming more awake and
Mhm.
aware.
Mm. You're talking me into it. I mean,
Okay.
sometimes seriously, because sometimes I'll see things. I'm trying to rack my brain right now to something that would come to mind of something that I would like. Oh my gosh, I want to share this because it's so obvious. And there are obvious things like, are you kidding me? How is this even possible? But then I think I maybe feel a little critical or judgmental when I hear people that are, the 444 and then the 444 and I mean, you're stopping at the stoplight and you see all three. Okay, that makes me pause. But yeah, I that is so fascinating the way that you're saying that it's increasing our intuition. We're paying attention. We're being
Yes.
mindful. Mhm.
And it's just, you gave the example of, the red car.
Mhm.
And it's true. If we go buy a certain car, next thing, that's all we're seeing for the next whatever.
Right.
Well, that is a form of paying attention.
Mhm.
They were always there. We just weren't paying attention to them.
Right, right. Okay, so talk to me about the Essential Soul Care course. How does that go along with the playbook and the Oracle deck? And by the way, if you're listening, we have these links in the show notes, and so you can go and purchase these things and check it out. The book I think is on Amazon. Oracle deck is on Etsy, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So talk to me about the course.
So the course is really for coaches, therapists, metaphysical practitioners, anybody who is working with other people and they want to learn the process of using an Oracle deck ethically with clients. So, and there's some leeway with people who are not therapists. They don't have that strict scope of practice, ethics code, etc. Um, but the combination of the deck, the guidebook, and the playbook allows the practitioner to learn the lexicon behind the deck so that they have a deck. And I use many decks, but they have a deck that they understand left, right, and center. Like they get it. They get it for themselves. They're able to help their clients get it for themselves.
Hmm.
And it's really about not teaching future casting or predictive readings, but intuitive readings, insightful readings, metaphorical readings, project using it as a projective tool, which we've done as therapists for years. Here's a picture. What comes up for you? Let's do
Hmm.
some contemplative writing. I'm going to give you a prompt. Write for 5 minutes. Stream of consciousness. What comes up? Same thing. You pull a card. What's coming up for you?
Yeah. What are the ethical issues surrounding using a deck for therapists?
Well, therapists don't, whether it's a deck or a Bible or whatever spiritual tool, therapists don't need to push their agenda on the client. If the client comes in expressing a desire, and often with me, they'll express it before we meet because they've seen what I do on my website, right? That's why they're coming to me.
You
But
set the expectation. You've set the playing
exactly.
field. Mm-hmm.
Yep. So if a client comes into an office and there's oracle decks on the shelf, the client may say, "Oh, do you use oracle decks?" Yes. There's an open dialogue. If the client is inclined, then the therapist can go there.
Mm-hmm.
But for a therapist out of the box to just pull the Bible or a deck or a crystals or let's do some oils or whatever, that's there needs to be an informed consent process so that you know that your client knows your scope of practice, your training.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody needs to do any of this without some basic training.
Of course.
And I'm not saying it's rocket science. It's just that's your due diligence as a professional.
Mm-hmm.
So that if you get called on the carpet for something, you can say, I have training. I have training that is, it's credentialed training. It's
Mm-hmm.
vetted training. So
Mm-hmm.
that's also important.
Mm-hmm. You've mentioned previously in our conversation that you offer supervision for healers and therapists, and there are courses that you provide online for that, and I believe even in person, or I guess I should say in person, live training via
Yeah.
Zoom. What are the most common challenges that healers and therapists are facing, and how do you help them navigate that in the midst of supervision? And maybe even just for those of us who don't know, what is supervision and how is that helpful?
So clinical supervision is usually required for all practitioners when they may have an associate's license when they get out of graduate school, and then they work in clinical supervision for 2 to 4 years, depending on their discipline. And then after that, you're deemed fully licensed. And in the United States, often the culture is, okay, I don't need supervision anymore because the state doesn't mandate it. But it's encouraged for all of us to seek at least, at the very least, peer supervision, like somebody else that's licensed that you can have a discussion with around a concept or a client. And then in other parts of the country, like Europe and the UK, supervision is part of your lifelong responsibility as a professional. So I have a few supervision clients in the UK who are fully accredited, and I see them once a month and we discuss issues, clients. But my style of supervision is psychospiritual. It is bringing in that other layer of knowing into the room. It is about me challenging the supervisee to think about what they're bringing in the room, not what the client is bringing in.
Mm-hmm.
We need both. But I think where supervision lacks a lot of times is the self-awareness that needs to happen those are the numinous moments. That's when it happens, when you're in a session with your client and you're aware of your own aha as they're having their aha.
Mm-hmm.
That makes for very powerful coaching, therapy, healing, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I work with supervisees.
So you have some people that are in Europe or different parts of the world where there's an expectation that there would be supervision, but you're also proposing that anyone who's listening, would you say even if they're not like a therapist or counselor, but just even a healer,
Sure.
could benefit from clinical supervision?
I offer a 12-month intensive, and it's, taking cases and sort of deconstructing them based on psychospiritual concepts. And then we meet once a month.
Mm-hmm. For
And we talk
support,
about it.
helping them have a support. Really, I'm hearing it's a support system, but
Yeah,
also then helping them process their own internal world as they are healing, helping heal others.
exactly.
Hmm. Nice.
Most of us would say, "Oh, yes, that's very important," but many of us are guilty of not really doing the work in that way.
Yeah. It's an investment of both time and money.
Yeah, it
And
is.
when you're probably overwhelmed and maybe you'd rather spend that money on a vacation, rather than supervision, but long-term soul care, as you've said,
Yeah,
that supervision is part of that process.
right.
So I see and have heard you talk about this high value for ethics in the area of therapy and coaching. Why is that such an emphasis for you? And how do you help instill that in others? I mean,
I guess it's
that sounds like a ridiculous question. Why are you concerned about ethics? You know what I mean? I know it sounds ludicrous. It sounds
I
I get that, but it is definitely an emphasis for you, right? That's something that you feel called to bring to the table. So why?
I I guess it's part of my own core values. Um, because when I came into the field, I wasn't in the field long before I was, the ethics chair of a state counseling association, and then the ethics chair of yet another state counseling association.
Wow.
And I did that off and on for 7 years. I've helped write ethical frameworks. Um, you know, T's crossed, I's dotted. I ran an agency in Georgia um, with about 40 therapists in the field and another 30 parent educators, paraprofessionals, working for under state and county contracts and forensics and court. And you know, you gotta you gotta be on it.
Hmm.
And so that's just been an emphasis the entire time. Like, okay, if I'm going to do this and I'm going to keep my license, how do I do this ethically? What
Hmm.
does my informed consent need to look like? How can I be transparent? If I'm going to be a therapist and a coach, my client needs to know what role I'm in when they're working with me,
Hmm.
because there are so many implications to that. Um,
Hmm.
and currently, most of the work I do, my informed consent says I am a consultant, because I pull from coaching, I pull from therapy, I pull from metaphysical tools, psychospiritual. Sometimes I give advice,
Hmm.
which as a therapist, we're taught we let them come to the end. Well, sometimes I give advice
Hmm.
depending on the issue, the question at hand, etc. So because I'm pulling in so much, I prefer to be referred to as a consultant.
Hmm. So a lot of the people that are listening right now would probably be in the sphere of sound healer, coach, life coach, business coach, somatic coach, health coach.
Mhm.
And what are the main ethical situations or things that they need to be mindful of those individuals that they may be blind to? What are the things that you would say, hey, here are two or three things that you may want to be thinking about in regard to ethics?
So with coaching is not regulated. There's no license to be a coach. Anybody can hang their shingle and say they're a coach. But in the United States, at least, any of us can be sued. So, sort of the same due diligence applies. You should have proper training. You should be a member of a coaching organization that has a code of ethics so that you can say to your clients, I'm trained and I'm a part of this professional organization and I have liability insurance. I'm willing to take all those risks to be the coach I need to be for you. And then if you're a therapist and coaching, some of the things you need to be aware of, I'll give you an example. So, a therapist decides she also wants or he wants to be a divorce coach, working with people who are not necessarily struggling with any mental health issues. They're just going through a divorce. It's situational. It's you've been there, you know it. So if that therapist is working under the title of coach with a proper informed consent, the therapist needs to understand that if by chance the client's lawyer subpoenas the coach, who is also a therapist, to come to court, that client practitioner privilege of confidentiality may not exist, because there is not that privilege as a coach. There is as a therapist. But this therapist is now working under the label of coach. So it's just very, very critical that your client understand what hat you're wearing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the coach that may even have proper coach training, but the client says, I think they were doing therapy. You know, understanding the difference between therapy and coaching is very important. And yes, of course, they overlap.
Mm-hmm.
And then the whole issue of crossing state lines with your therapy license. You can only see people in the state you're licensed, but as a coach, it's different. And how do you maneuver all that?
Mm-hmm.
And it can be maneuvered. You just, again, it's awareness. It's paying
Mm-hmm.
attention.
And those are things that you can help people navigate, I would assume, even in the
Yeah.
clinical supervision process.
Yeah. And in the coach, like any therapist that does coach training with me comes out of that training understanding the separate roles.
Mm-hmm. I want to go back to this topic of aromatherapy because you've written a book, Intuitive Aromatherapy, Essentially Soulful Practice. That book, and we'll link to it in the show notes. Who would that be a good resource for, and how would that help them?
Anybody. You know, that book is just really my journey. And it's a series of essays, really. It's just my journey of using the oils, how I've used the oils, how I've used it to increase my intuition, how I've used the oils to support my own mental health, how to use the oils in support of trauma. Many of the things we've already talked about today. It's not by any stretch of the imagination. It's not a textbook. It's a fun read. It's an easy read.
Mm-hmm.
But anybody that's curious about essential oils, other than, supporting a cold or a respiratory issue or tea tree for your skin and that sort of thing, this is just expanding it into that soulful space. Again, embodiment,
Mm-hmm.
using essential oils as part of the embodiment of your personhood.
There's so many different brands on the market of essential oils. How would you suggest, if somebody hasn't started, using essential oils, how would you encourage them to approach which brand to purchase?
Well, first of all, essential oils never have fragrance. So when you see a commercial with a plug-in that says with essential oils, that means in a vat of fragrance and chemicals, they have put a few drops of essential oils, right? So all of our perfumes have essential oils, but they also have fragrance and chemicals. So that was where I didn't understand that when I was first introduced to oils. Because if I'm in the grocery store, I avoid the laundry aisle with all the lavender perfumed laundry detergent and dryer sheets and all of that, which is totally different than pure lavender essential oil, which comes from the plant. So pure essential oils are only going to be the plant material. Some essential oils can be ingested, but certain brands delineate on the label whether it can be ingested or not. So don't ingest an oil unless it says so on the label. And even so, be conservative with that. There are many good companies out there. Even the good companies, though, people will buy in bulk and sell on Amazon. Do not ever buy your essential oils like a big company like doTERRA or Young Living. Don't buy those on Amazon or eBay because they can be tampered with so easy and diluted and, otherwise compromised. So choose your company. And I'm a Young Living fan, but I use other companies as well. You know, not every company is going to have every oil you want.
Mm-hmm.
Um, But just knowing their most true blue essential oil companies will give their the information on the oil, where the oil comes from, sort of the the pharma sheets, so to speak,
Hmm.
um, transparent about the farms, how they source the oils, etc. Make
Hmm.
sure the company, has some agri sensibility.
Hmm.
They're caring for the earth while they're bottling these oils.
Hmm.
Uh,
You have had I'm going to say significant career. I don't want to say long because that could imply, something else. You've had a significant career. What is your what are your hopes and dreams for the work ahead? I mean, it doesn't have to be this huge vision, but just like I'm curious, like what is it that you want to see continue to develop in your work?
Well, I teach a lot of different topics. I'm not the expert on all those topics, but one of my skills is curating really good topic material.
Hmm.
So I also work at the Institute for Life Coach Training as faculty. And occasionally I will build a course out because there's a need for people to learn that topic. They're asking for a certain topic. So I can build a course out. Sometimes I teach it. Sometimes we find another faculty member to teach it. I really enjoy building out. I love building courses. I love interacting with students. I love offering consultation. I love doing supervision. And I want to continue to just do more of that. I'm
Mhm.
at I want to say the fall part of my career. I'm not into the winter years yet, but I'm in the fall years, the autumn years. Um, and I'm finally at a place where I'm not constantly building, building and what next? And, now I'm in a place where I can do what I'm called to do.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have many courses on your own website. Obviously, the Essential Soul Care book, the deck, the course. As you mentioned, you also offer courses at um, the Institute for Life Coach Training. And so we'll make sure
Mhm.
that we have all those links. But you also have a podcast called the Soul Portals Podcast. Tell us about your vision behind that.
So that is a friend and colleague of mine, Cedric Spire. He heads up that podcast. I call myself the sidecar. But Cedric and I have known each other for 20 years, and he wrote a book on his his psychospiritual approach to the helping professions. And Soul Portals podcast is really about bringing people in who, as I said, one person was a music therapist. We've had a physician. We've had a shaman. We've had a rabbi. We've had, and it's really about hearing, not so much their spiritual career, but what about their spiritual journey, personal journey, sparked what they're doing.
Hmm.
Every podcast is different and interesting, and I guess if there's a common thread, it's just that spiritual piece that
Hmm.
people come to the podcast willing to talk about.
Hmm.
So yeah.
So, one of the things that I would encourage people to start with is on your website, you offer something called the Ultimate Soul Design Workbook.
Mhm.
I downloaded it, and it's an extensive piece ebook essentially where it really has some amazing questions to help you be thinking about your life and your own purpose and your soul design, as you call it. So I'd encourage people to check that out. But what is the best way for people who want to learn more about you, connect with you, work with you? Give us the details.
Well, I'm at DeeAnna Nagel, DeeAnna Nagel, on X and Instagram. So you can always go there. You'll get a good sense of me, I think. You can always email me. Just go to the contact page on my website. Um, you know, Listen to a podcast, read my blog. I mean, the because my tribe are the people who get engage with me on some level, and they feel the connection,
Mhm.
and we all have different tribes. So I don't expect I connect with everybody, but the people who resonate with my message will find me.
Absolutely. So
Yep.
DeeAnnaMerzNagel.com,
Yep.
and we will put that in the show notes, of course, and all of your social media links. So DeeAnna, thank you for just
Thank you.
sharing your journey. And I loved hearing about, the unfolding, coming out of the pixie closet, as you said. I'm really fascinated. I'm going to take from our conversation two things specifically. One, the being aware of the synchronicities, and that would increase your intuition. I'm going to really contemplate that. And the second is the how essential oils opened up your intuition and took it to the next level. That really inspired me to think a bit more about that. Yeah, yeah, that's very fascinating. What's your favorite essential oil?
Oh, there's too many. Today I'm wearing a blend, Magnify Your Purpose.
Okay, love it.
But I would have to say my favorite essential oil that sort of changed things for me physically was eucalyptus.
Hmm.
I'd read about it,
Hmm.
heard about it. You smell it when you go to the spa, but it really helped support my respiratory system.
Wow.
And then I was convinced, and then everything else rolled out.
DeeAnna, it's great to be with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.